Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. Geeky Sparkle sitting this video out. She will be back, but I want to talk about how I think we're on the other side of it. On the other side of everything. Everything that channels like ours have been pushing back against for the last couple of years. I think it's over. I think it's done. Not saying that our work is done or that our channel is done by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that the worst of it is over, and we're not going to realize just how how we were on the other side of it until years after the fact. We'll be able to look at things and pinpoint a specific time or place and be like, yeah, this is about the time that these ridiculous activist-driven websites started to die off. This is about the time that Hollywood started to pivot back to center, to give up on chasing quote-unquote woke entertainment. And we're starting to see that now, but again, it's just like dead malls. Like, we didn't realize that malls were dying until we stepped away for a few years, and then we would go back to the mall and you're like, oh my god, there's nobody here, there are no businesses here. What happened? But the decline, the signs of decline were there. Businesses would go out, they wouldn't get replaced, so you would have, one or two empty storefronts, and then you would have, 5 or 6 empty storefronts, and the next thing you know, the mall is 95% empty, except for that Annie Ann's pretzels stays in business somehow. Somebody's eating those pretzels, and then the next thing you know, Bon-Ton has turned into a gym or a healthcare center or something, and then they just close the whole thing down. We didn't realize that malls were in decline, as they were declining. We didn't realize that arcades were in decline as they were declining. We just started to notice little things here and there, but it's not until you step away from a situation and step back into it that you realize, like, oh yeah, this is over. And I'm telling you, I think that the majority of, or at least the worst of the backlash against fans and pop culture and all of that, I think it's over. And I think what did it was money, or a lack thereof. The money ran out. And when the money runs out, people that have had the luxury of having jobs, even if it's for a number of years, based off of venture capital or whatever it was, being propped up by studios, they're not going to have jobs anymore. They're going to mosey on out, or to salvage the site, they're going to the site owners are going to pivot to more neutral content. So let's talk about this, because I noticed something very weird when I was going out looking for things to talk about today, that there wasn't a whole lot to talk about. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants here on Clownfish TV. Guys, almost 276,000 subs. Thank you for the support. Speaking of support, if you go out to clownfishtv.com, we're trying to bring back pop culture blogs, fan-run pop culture blogs like they were about 10 or 15 years ago. And I think this is where the future of fan media is going. I think it's going to the past. I think we're going to see, a return to blogs that were fan-powered, fan reviewers, or just kind of a very small independent company running these websites, because the studios have realized that for them, it's a waste of time. Even if they make some money, they're not making the amounts of money they need to make like, a Disney or a Universal or whatever happy. And a lot of these blogs we've talked about, the massive amounts of layoffs and the pivot in content. What actually kicked this off was my going out to Mary Sue. And for the most part, though, it looks like they're getting away from politics. They used to have a pretty much a 50-50 split, and they still do have some political articles on the site. But I'm going through the most recent posts, and I'm like, they're mostly neutral. They're mostly pop culture articles. And I think this is because of their new mandate, their new ownership. They were sold last fall, I think it was. And I think their new owners are probably like, hey, you guys got to bring it back to center, or at least not whack the beehive intentionally, because we're actually driving people away. People are coming to the website mostly for pop culture news, and you're hitting them upside the head with, well, here we go. Here's one, about Mississippi Mississippi governor, whatever, I don't know. Anyway, most people are coming to sites like this for pop culture news, objective pop culture news. Lots of layoffs. G4, we're going to talk more about that. Just even going back a year or two ago, Sci-Fi Fangirls, we brought them up the other day in relation to anime, because they were the ones who put out that ridiculous article about, fascism and anime being intrinsically tied together, that if you were into anime or you had an anime avatar, you probably were some kind of alt-right Nazi or something. Speaking of Nazis, anime characters that have military uniforms regardless of whether or not it's a fictitious country, whether or not they're the good guys or the bad guys. Yeah, that article, and there are a lot of hit pieces like that out there, but they got shut down. So that was a ridiculous outlet that got shut down. Fanbyte just got shut down. Tencent shut that down. Now, I don't think they were as ridiculous, but I've seen some pretty weird stuff out there. Vox Media. Vox owns Polygon. We've seen some Polygon writers get laid off. We've seen a lot of writers, journalists that were huge troublemakers, I guess you would call them. A lot of them getting gone. A lot of them basically blacklisting themselves. G4, of course, is the most recent. They got hit with surprise layoffs. It should not be a surprise at all. The money is running out. The money was never really there. I don't know why they decided to reactivate G4 the way that they did, but 500,000 subs on YouTube, and they can barely break 20,000 views in a day. It's not sustainable. People have moved on. Here's Kotaku. Here's the opinion page on Kotaku. Where's all the Trump outrage? I'm not seeing it. And I'm wondering, how many of these websites are going to actually be able to stay in business if they're not constantly talking about Trump and the Republicans and the alt-right trying to take over the video games and all this stuff. It's mostly, it's like 95% gaming news. You know what I'm saying? I think the worst of it's over. And again, it's not that it's over, because you're always going to have some stragglers. You're always going to have people say ridiculous stuff in the media. This has been going on forever, But I think the outrage for the sake of outrage, or the outrage for the sake of owning the chuds, or the outrage, what I'm saying? That drama, I think as far as the journalists are concerned, I think is mostly behind us, again, except for a few stragglers. You're going to see it. And I think it's a last-ditch effort to salvage these websites before they become completely worthless and lay a bunch of people off. And I think the big wake-up call, again, was, G4 laying off. I think it was at Waypoint. They shut that one down, too. And these journalists are running out of places to work. And, the mandate going forward, if you want to keep the advertisers happy and you want to keep your fans happy, is stick to sports. I mean, it's kind of like with comics, too. I was going to do a story on Marvel kind of walking it back with, Avengers and stuff like that. And I just couldn't muster up enough give a shit. I can't really muster up enough give a shit to talk about the mainstream comic book industry anymore, because I think it's kind of over, too. I think not that comics aren't selling anymore, but all the drama and stuff. I mean, there's still some drama with YouTubers and Comicsgate and that stuff, but it's definitely become a tempest in a teapot at this point. The general public is not as aware of it as they were. Again, you've got occasional vindictive journalists out there that are trying to stir it up again, because they want to stir it up again. We said before, they were actively trying to restart Gamergate to get views, to have a cause to rally around, to get people to read their shit. And people are over Twitter. A lot of people are leaving Twitter. We don't know how real it is. So it really does feel like, things are calming down. I mean, I'm not saying, again, that it's 100% over, but for the most part it is. And I think we'll still have some fumes of ridiculousness, but they were there before all the crazy stuff started happening around, 2011, 2012. They'll be there after. But I think a lot of these loud voices are going to be ignored. And I think that the future of fandom going forward is going to be fans are going to go back to running their own websites. That's what, Newsarama, believe it or not, Newsarama and Comic Book Resources started out as fan-powered sites, IGN, and then they got bought out by corporations that wanted to make a quick buck off of fandom. And, they got run into the ground because the people that were running them were not the people that started them. They didn't care as much, and they became just a kind of a spoke in the corporate wheel. But, I think we're going to see more independent websites pop up. Again, clownfishtv.com and others. And I think we're going to see more fanzines and that kind of mentality. More people doing independent publishing, with or without the drama. I can tell you on our channel, we are trying to pivot away from nonstop drama 24/7. It's not healthy. It's not fun. It really isn't. It's not what we set out to do. There's just so much of it to cover and so much ridiculousness to cover. But, we could pivot and go harder in the politics and stuff like that. But I'm like, that's not us. That's not who we are. And I personally, and I'm not throwing shade at any other channels out there that have decided to get more and more political. But for us, the reason that we got into this was, pushing back against overly political content, having politics shoved into everything, having politics shoved into, pop culture news sites. You just want to read a game review. You don't want to hear about, some anti-Trump rant, and coming at it from the opposite direction, I don't think is a solution. I think it just makes more problems. If your goal always was to talk about pop culture and to make pop culture apolitical, becoming more political, even if it's on the other side, is not a solution either, in my opinion. But there are people out there that they want to fight a culture war, and that's, if they want to, that's on you, man. That was never what we signed up to do. But I do think that a lot of this is coming to a head. I think it's going to be over soon. I think it's going to be safer to go back out on the internet, because I think eventually Twitter is going to get blown up one way or the other. I'm not saying it's all going to stop, but I think the majority of it is. Now, this is, very interesting. This is coming from Games Daily. They said a catastrophic series of firings swept the industry. They talk about G4. They said that people didn't even know who was gone at G4. They said at the end of the day, nothing's changed. We're literally going to be doing the same amount of content we've been doing since last November, except they canceled their live streams. We're growing, and this is what growth looks like. It has ups and downs. Bullshit, you're not growing. According to Ethan Gatch, the reporter who penned the Kotaku piece, employees were kept in the dark about potential layoffs until last minute. They always are. They say management communicated nothing. They had to find out who was gone and who wasn't by searching names in Slack. That's how it works, This is, let's see, what's this from? Future. Future's another one. I didn't know that. UK publishing house Future announced a wave of layoffs across a number of outlets, including TechRadar Gaming, Android Central, Windows Central, and iMore. iLess now. The news comes despite Future reporting full-year profits, according to a report from Games Industry. According to the Press Gazette, the pay gap between Future's executives and the average employee is among the largest in the industry. They just didn't see a point. They didn't see a point anymore. In May, Future announced a 48% revenue growth. It doesn't matter if they're making more money. If they don't see a long-term plan for your blog, because it doesn't mean anything to them, because they're not really fans, they just want money, then you're always going to be in the crosshairs. Marketing people, media people always have to justify their existence. Always. What have you done for me lately? Fanbyte got gutted. This is the state of the industry. For many, this week's dismissal hammered home the unstable nature of the video game journalism sector, as corporate owners seem to prioritize traffic over creativity and content. Oh my God, imagine that. In games media, even if you meet and exceed all expectations, work nights and weekends, and implement and execute awesome things against impossible odds, you still wake up every morning wondering when the layoffs are coming. It's not right. Ain't right, said Daniel Tack, previously an editor at Game Informer, which had a round of layoffs in July. Really goes to show how much passion folks in games media have for the art form and the industry, that they're willing to do all this work for pretty tough wages and basically no job stability. Well, a lot of it, for a lot of them, and this is what we found out, is they were there for the activism. They were there for the platform. They were there thinking they were going to get a foot in the door to work in the video game industry and then affect change from within, and it's all ending. I love video games a lot. I don't think this culture and the journalism landscape loves me back. It's comics too, man. That's comics. It's a joy to discover that the stories of creative workers and labor and the tools I cultivated to understand and help tell these stories exist far beyond games, said probably ex-Motherboard staff writer. This is somebody from a PC Games N reporter. Inexpressibly discouraging to see Fanbyte work for years to create a site that's actually made for human beings to read interesting things, only to have it axed with the flip of a switch because nope, business, LOL. Well, that's the way it works, man. That's the way it works. All told, the games media landscape has experienced a tectonic shift in recent years. The rise of the influencer has called into question the relationship between game publishers and journalists. I hate to be that guy, but we are absolutely positively eating your lunch. Not us in particular, but YouTubers, Twitch streamers, and again, they connect with gamers better than a lot of these journalists who have proven, not all of them, but a lot of them have proven they don't really even play the games or understand the games or understand the industry very well. They're just like, I'm a games journalist. You have to listen to me. I can't play Cuphead, but, Cuphead's hard. Corporate leadership is becoming increasingly disconnected from the average journalist as revenue goals become more and more unrealistic, making sites beholden to an algorithm they cannot control. Where do these people think the money comes from? And this is a journalist, right? Like, look, dude, I'm not trying to dunk on you, but clearly, Sam, you do not understand how business works. The algorithm and the traffic determines the ad revenue. It determines the ad rates, even for direct ad buys that you can get from companies like Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft. And if your traffic's not there, if your site's not bringing any traffic, guess what? There's no money. And if there's no money, guess what? It's game over because there's no money to pay anybody. And that's what's going on. Basically, the market is correcting itself. This always happens. This is why I love capitalism. I love the free market. The market always corrects itself. And we had an overabundance of websites and journalists out there that weren't bringing any revenue in. And 15, 20 years ago, they would have been relegated to doing a couple issues of a fanzine until they gave it up because it wasn't going anywhere. But these people were given voices and given platforms backed by venture capital or using somebody else's money, and now that they have to perform, we're going to see a lot less of them. So I don't know, guys, just an observation. It does feel like we're entering the dying mall phase of pop culture and video game journalism, and we'll see what happens. I don't know, maybe things will kind of sort of go back to normal. I don't know. I'm gonna wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.